Captain Lee Daho stood in the waiting room outside the Galactic Council chamber. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing. Today would decide humanity's future in the galaxy. Through the thick glass walls, he could see the massive meeting hall where representatives from 12 different alien species sat waiting. The chamber looked like a giant crystal bowl turned upside down. Bright artificial suns hung from the ceiling, casting strange shadows as the alien delegates moved in their seats. Some looked like giant insects with too many arms. Others were covered in scales that changed color when they talked. A few looked almost human, but their eyes were too large and completely black. Dr. Park So-jin walked up beside him. She was humanity's best expert on alien cultures and languages. Her job was to speak for all humans in the galaxy. She looked tired. Dark circles showed under her eyes, and her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Are you ready for this?" she asked Lee. "As ready as anyone can be when facing judgment from half the galaxy," Lee replied. He watched through the glass as more alien delegates took their seats. "What do you think they'll really demand?" Park shook her head. "Nothing good. The Vorthak have been planning this for months. They've convinced the other species that humans are dangerous. The Vorthak were the most powerful species in the Galactic Council. They looked like giant praying mantises, but they walked on 2 legs and had 4 arms. Their leader, High Regent Thex Mori, was nearly 3 meters tall. His green-black shell was covered in scars from old battles. The Vorthak controlled the largest military force in the galaxy. A small robot rolled up to them. Its voice was flat and electronic. "The council is ready. Dr. Park So-jin, please enter the chamber." Park took a deep breath. "Here we go." She walked through the doors into the chamber. Lee followed, but had to stay in a separate area for observers. The room was enormous. Hundreds of alien faces looked down at Park as she walked to a small platform in the center. High Regent Thex Mori stood up. His forearms moved as he talked, and translator devices around the room turned his clicking sounds into words humans could understand. "Dr. Park So-jin," his translated voice boomed through the chamber. "You represent the species called humans. You are here because your people have been accused of serious crimes against galactic peace." Park stood straight. "What crimes are we accused of, High Regent?" Another alien delegate stood up. This one was from the Zenthari Coalition. She looked like a large bird covered in blue feathers, but she had hands instead of wings. "Aggressive expansion," the Zenthari delegate said. "In just 200 years, humans have spread to over 800 worlds. You build colonies faster than any species in galactic history." A third delegate joined in. He was from the crystalline hegemony, and his body looked like it was made of living glass. Technological contamination. "Human science and medicine have spread to dozens of worlds. You change how other species live without asking permission." "Cultural imperialism," added a fourth voice. This delegate was small and gray with huge black eyes. "Human art, music, and ideas are influencing young people on worlds across the galaxy. They question their own traditions because of human influence." High Regent Thex Mori moved his forearms in a gesture that meant authority among his people. "These are not small problems, Dr. Park. Your species grows too fast, spreads too quickly, and changes too much wherever you go." Park looked around the chamber. She saw fear in many of the alien faces, but she also saw something else: jealousy. "With respect, High Regent," Park said, "humans have never forced anyone to accept our help. We offer medicine to sick people. We share food with hungry populations. We trade knowledge freely. If other species choose to learn from us, that is their choice." "Choice?" Thex Mori's translator made a sound like laughter, but it was cold and harsh. "Young Vorthak workers are questioning the caste system because of human ideas about equality. Zenthari farmers want to use human growing techniques instead of traditional methods. Crystalline hegemony citizens are listening to human music and forgetting their own songs. And this is bad because," Park asked. The chamber filled with angry sounds: clicks, whistles, growls, and electronic tones. The translator systems worked overtime to turn them all into words. "Because it is not the natural way," shouted the Zenthari delegate. "Species should develop according to their own nature, not be influenced by outsiders. Because change brings chaos," added the crystalline delegate. "Stable societies require stable traditions." High Regent Thex Mori raised all 4 arms for silence. The chamber became quiet. "Dr. Park," he said, "the Galactic Council has made a decision. Humanity has proven itself too dangerous to remain unrestricted. Your species will submit to guided development. What does that mean? Park asked, though she suspected she knew. Human colonies will be limited to 50 worlds. All faster-than-light travel technology will be surrendered to Council control. Human scientists will work only under alien supervision. Human cultural exports will be reviewed and approved before distribution. Human population growth will be regulated. Park felt her heart sink, but she kept her face calm. And if humanity refuses these terms? Total economic embargo, Thexmori replied immediately. No trade with any Council species. No access to galactic shipping lanes. No participation in interspecies commerce. He paused. And if humans continue to refuse, the Preservation Alliance is prepared to use military force to contain the human threat. The Preservation Alliance was a group of the most powerful military species in the galaxy. They had enough ships to destroy every human world if they wanted to. Park looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at her. She thought about the human colonies scattered across the galaxy, families who had built new lives on distant worlds, scientists working to cure diseases that affected dozens of species, artists creating beauty that touched alien hearts, farmers growing food that fed hungry populations. How long do we have to decide? She asked. 30 galactic standard days, Thexmori said. Return here with humanity's answer. Park bowed slightly, which was considered respectful by most galactic species. The human government will consider your terms and provide an answer. As she walked out of the chamber, Lee fell into step beside her. They walked in silence until they were alone in a private corridor. So? Lee asked. They want to put us in a cage, Park said quietly. A very comfortable cage, but still a cage. What do you think Earth will say? Park thought about the message she would have to send home. She thought about the humans living on hundreds of worlds, building lives, falling in love, raising children, creating art, solving problems, helping neighbors regardless of whether those neighbors had 2 legs or 6 or none at all. I think, she said slowly, that humans have never been very good at staying in cages. Lee smiled for the first time that day. No, we haven't. They walked toward their ship where they would send the most important message in human history. Behind them, in the crystal chamber, hundreds of aliens were already celebrating their victory over the dangerous humans. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The mistake wasn't threatening humanity. The mistake was giving humanity a choice between submission and freedom. Throughout their entire history, whenever humans faced that choice, they always picked the same answer. They always chose freedom. Admiral Kim Hyun-soo stared at the holographic displays filling the command center of the UES New Seoul. Each glowing screen showed a different human colony world. 847 worlds in total, with nearly 200 billion human lives scattered across the galaxy. The ship's main conference room had been converted into an emergency command center. Holographic projections of Earth's leaders, colony governors, and military commanders filled every available space. The meeting had been going on for 6 hours and tempers were starting to rise. We cannot fight the entire galaxy, said Governor Yoon Haiwan from the Proxima colonies. Her image flickered slightly as the long-distance communication struggled with interference. The Preservation Alliance has over 10,000 warships. We have maybe 300 that could fight effectively. We don't need to fight them, replied General Han Jun-ki from Earth's military command. Look at the numbers. They need us more than we need them. Professor Cho Min-ho from the Terran Institute activated a new display. It showed trade routes connecting human colonies to alien worlds. The lines of connection looked like a giant web spanning the galaxy. The general is right, Professor Cho said. In the past 50 years, humans have become central to galactic commerce. We don't just trade with aliens, we connect aliens to each other. Dr. Park So-jin, who had just returned from the Galactic Council, stood up. She looked exhausted but determined. I've been studying the economic data. Here's what we found. She activated her own set of displays. Numbers and charts filled the air around the conference table. Human medical technology has eliminated 17 diseases that affect multiple alien species. The Xanthari plague that killed millions 5 years ago, cured by human doctors. The crystalline hegemony's genetic disorder that was destroying their reproduction, fixed by human gene therapy. More charts appeared. Human agricultural techniques now feed 43 alien worlds. The desert worlds of the Vorthak Empire produce 3 times more food than they did before humans taught them hydroponic farming. The ice worlds of the outer rim grow crops that were impossible before human environmental systems. Admiral Kim leaned forward. What about culture and education? That's the big one, Dr. Park replied. Human teachers work on over 100 alien worlds. Human artists have fans on 300 worlds. Human philosophers are quoted in alien government meetings. Human entertainment is broadcast to billions of non-human viewers. Chief Engineer Lim Yu-jin cleared her throat. There's something else. Something they might not have considered. All eyes turned to her. She was one of humanity's best experts on faster-than-light travel technology. Our quantum tunneling network, she continued. It's not just for human ships anymore. 60% of all galactic shipping now uses routes we discovered and maintain. If we shut down our navigation beacons and quantum markers, interspecies trade would be cut by more than half. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Governor Lee Jin-woo from the Tau Ceti colonies spoke up. Are you saying we could cripple galactic commerce just by leaving? Not just commerce, said Professor Cho. Communication, transportation, medical supply chains, food distribution, entertainment networks, educational exchanges. All of it runs through human infrastructure now. Captain Lee Dae-ho, who had been quiet during most of the meeting, finally spoke. They're not trying to control us because we're dangerous. They're trying to control us because they're dependent on us. Dr. Park nodded. That's exactly right. The Vorthak and their allies realized that human influence was changing their societies faster than they could control. But instead of adapting, they decided to try to limit us. So what are our options? Asked Admiral Kim. General Han pulled up military projections. Option 1, submit to their demands. Accept limited colonies, supervised science, and controlled culture. Become a client species under alien oversight. Angry voices erupted around the room. The idea of submission was clearly unpopular. Option 2, fight, the general continued. Use our 300 warships against their 10,000. Odds of success approximately 0%. Option 3, asked Governor Yoon. Chief Engineer Lim stood up. We leave, all of us. Every human colony, every research station, every trade post, every diplomatic mission. Complete withdrawal from galactic civilization. Is that even possible? Asked Captain Lee. I've been running the calculations, Lim replied. It would take 6 months to safely evacuate all human installations in alien space. Another 6 months to establish complete independence for our supply chains and communications networks. But yes, it's possible. Professor Cho activated new displays showing human space separate from alien territories. We could be completely self-sufficient. 847 worlds with all the resources and population we need. What would happen to the aliens? Asked Dr. Park. That, said Admiral Kim, would be their problem to solve. The debate continued for another 3 hours. Representatives from colony worlds argued about the risks and benefits. Military leaders discussed defense strategies. Scientists calculated resource requirements. Economists projected trade impacts. Finally, Admiral Kim called for a vote. All in favor of rejecting the Galactic Council's demands and beginning complete withdrawal from alien space? One by one, the votes came in. Earth government, yes. Proxima colonies, yes. Tau Ceti settlements, yes. Outer Rim territories, yes. The final tally was unanimous. Every human leader voted for withdrawal. Dr. Park, Admiral Kim said, you'll return to the Galactic Council with our answer. Tell them humanity rejects their terms. What exactly should I tell them? Park asked. Captain Lee smiled grimly. Tell them we're going home. All of us, Admiral Kim stood up. The holographic projections of leaders from across human space watched him carefully. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, as of today we begin Operation Exodus. Every human citizen, installation, and asset will be withdrawn from alien space within 12 months. We will honor all existing contracts and agreements, but we will sign no new ones. And then, asked Governor Yoon. Then we wait, Admiral Kim replied. We wait and see how long the galaxy can function without us. Chief Engineer Lim was already pulling up logistics charts. We'll need transport ships for 2 million humans living in alien space, medical evacuation for patients in human-run hospitals, secure transfer for research data and equipment. Make it happen, Admiral Kim ordered. I want the first evacuations to begin within the week. As the meeting ended and the holographic projections faded away, Dr. Park remained behind with Admiral Kim and Captain Lee. Do you really think this will work? She asked. Admiral Kim looked at the displays showing human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Park, in my 40 years of military service, I've learned one important thing. The most powerful position in any conflict is being the person the other side can't afford to lose. And if we're wrong, Captain Lee asked, then we'll have our 847 worlds and we'll build something even better than what we're leaving behind. Admiral Kim replied. But I don't think we're wrong. I think the aliens are about to learn exactly how much they need us. Dr. Park nodded slowly. No threats, no promises, we just walk away. Sometimes, said Admiral Kim, that's the strongest statement you can make. Coordinator. Oh Sang-woo stood in the command center watching hundreds of displays show human evacuations across the galaxy. Each screen represented a different world where humans were quietly packing up and leaving. It was the largest movement of people in galactic history, and most aliens didn't even notice it happening. On Altair's 7th, Dr. Na Yun-hai finished treating her last Xanthari patient. The blue-feathered alien had been suffering from a genetic disease that only human medicine could cure. As she handed over the final medication doses, the patient's family gathered around her. Dr. Na, the patient's daughter, chirped in broken standard, "Why you leaving? We need you here." Dr. Na looked at the family she had worked with for 3 years. She had watched this patient recover from near death. She had delivered the daughter's first egg child. She had become part of their community. "My government has called all humans home," she said simply. "I have to go." The Xanthari family looked confused. They had never heard of humans being recalled. In their experience, humans went wherever they wanted and stayed as long as they chose. "But who will treat the genetic sickness?" asked the patient. "Human doctors are only ones who know how." Dr. Na had been dreading this question. "I've left all my research files with the local medical center. Maybe your doctors can learn from them." She didn't mention that human genetic therapy required equipment that didn't exist on Xanthari worlds. She didn't mention that the techniques took years to master. She didn't mention that without regular treatment updates, the disease would return within a generation. 3 star systems away, teacher Kim Jamin was saying goodbye to his class of young Vorthak students. For 5 years, he had been teaching them human mathematics and science. His students regularly scored higher than traditional Vorthak students on standardized tests. "Teacher Kim," asked one student, a young female whose green shell was still soft with youth, "will you come back after vacation?" Kim looked at the eager faces staring up at him. These young Vorthak had learned to question things, to think creatively, to imagine possibilities beyond their traditional caste system. It was exactly this kind of thinking that had made the Galactic Council afraid of human influence. "I won't be coming back," he said gently, "but I want you to keep learning, keep asking questions, keep thinking for yourselves." The students looked shocked. Vorthak society was built on stability and tradition. Teachers stayed with the same students for decades. The idea of their favorite teacher simply leaving was almost incomprehensible. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. Human doctors finished treating their patients but took no new cases. Human farmers completed their growing seasons but didn't plant new crops. Human engineers finished their current projects but didn't start new ones. The evacuation was methodical and professional. Captain Lee Daeho had organized it like a military operation. But it looked like the most peaceful mass exodus in history. Humans packed their belongings, said their goodbyes, and quietly left. At first, many aliens were happy about it. Vorthak news broadcasts celebrated the end of human cultural contamination. Xanthari politicians spoke about returning to traditional values, crystalline. Hegemony leaders praised the restoration of natural development. High Regent Thex Mori gave a speech to the Galactic Council declaring victory. "The human threat has been neutralized," he announced, his forearms spread wide in triumph. "They have chosen exile over submission, and the galaxy is safer for it." But within weeks, the first problems started appearing. On Kepler Prime, the central hub for interspecies trade, Merchant Lord Kexthala watched his shipping empire begin to fall apart. For 20 years, his cargo vessels had used human-designed navigation routes that cut travel time between species by 30%. Human logistics specialists had organized his supply chains. Human translators had negotiated his contracts. Now the navigation routes were failing. Without human maintenance, the quantum beacons were going offline one by one. Supply chains that had run smoothly for decades were breaking down. Cargo ships were getting lost in hyperspace. Delivery times that had been measured in days were now taking weeks. Where are the human technicians? Keksthala demanded from his operations manager. Gone, sir, the manager replied nervously. All of them. They said their government called them home. Get them back. Pay them double. We tried, sir. They're not responding to communications from outside human space. On Vega Colony, the crystalline hegemony was facing a food crisis. For 15 years, their agricultural systems had used human-designed growing techniques. Human experts had taught them how to modify their crystal-based biology to digest new types of nutrients. Human farmers had helped them turn barren worlds into productive agricultural centers. Now the crop yields were falling. Without human supervision, the growing systems were producing food with lower nutritional value. Worse, some crops were failing entirely. The crystalline population, which had grown by 40% since adopting human farming methods, was facing the possibility of widespread hunger. Hive Queen Scalandra sent desperate messages to human space, offering massive payments for agricultural assistance. The messages went unanswered. The cultural impacts were even stranger. On dozens of worlds, young aliens who had grown up with human entertainment suddenly found their lives much quieter. Human music had stopped playing on interspecies broadcasting networks. Human stories and movies were no longer being translated into alien languages. Human art galleries and theaters closed down. The results were unexpected. Young Vorthak, who had been listening to human music about individual freedom, started asking uncomfortable questions about their caste system. But now cut off from new human ideas, they had no vocabulary for their dissatisfaction. They felt restless and angry, but couldn't explain why. Young Zenthari, who had been reading human philosophy about cooperation and democracy, began organizing discussion groups. But without new human books and ideas to guide them, their discussions went in circles. They knew something was missing from their traditional hierarchical society, but they couldn't figure out what. On Tau Ceti III, the neural collective of Sigma Draconis was experiencing something unprecedented. For the first time in their species' history, individual members of the collective were reporting feelings of loneliness. Human art and music had been stimulating previously unknown neural pathways. Without that stimulation, their collective consciousness was becoming less complex, less creative, less alive. Coordinator O watched the reports coming in from human intelligence services still monitoring alien communications. The aliens were trying to solve their problems without admitting they had been dependent on humans. Vorthak engineers were attempting to rebuild human navigation networks from memory. Zenthari doctors were trying to reverse engineer human medical equipment. Crystalline farmers were experimenting desperately with different growing techniques. Most telling of all, several alien species had started trying to copy human social and political systems. Democratic movements were appearing on worlds that had been ruled by kings for thousands of years. Equality movements were challenging caste systems that had been considered natural law. They're trying to become more human, reported intelligence officer Yoon Min-jung during O's daily briefing. Without humans around to learn from, they're trying to recreate humanity from the pieces they remember. How long before they figure out it's not working? Asked O. The engineering problems? Maybe 6 months to a year before their infrastructure completely fails. The agricultural issues? Next growing season will be a disaster. The cultural problems? Yoon paused. Those might never be solved. You can't teach someone to be creative and free-thinking, then expect them to forget how once you're gone. O nodded. Through the command center's main screen, he could see the last human evacuation ships leaving the Outer Rim territories. In a few more weeks, every human in alien space would be safely back in human-controlled systems. Any word from the Galactic Council? He asked. Complete silence, Yoon replied. Officially, they're still celebrating their victory over human expansionism. Unofficially, emergency sessions have been called in at least 6 different species governments. Oh smiled grimly. They wanted us to be smaller. They're about to find out exactly how big we had become. On his personal display, a message appeared from Admiral Kim. It was short. Operation Exodus complete. All humans safely evacuated from alien space. Phase 2 begins now. Phase 2 was the waiting period. Now they would see how long the galaxy could function without the humans who had quietly become essential to its operation. O suspected it wouldn't be very long at all. Outside the command center's windows, human ships were arriving from across the galaxy, filled with people coming home. They brought with them stories of tearful goodbyes, confused aliens, and crumbling systems. But they also brought something else, Determination. Humanity had chosen freedom over security, independence over acceptance. Now they would see what that choice was worth. 18 months had passed since the last human ship left alien space. The galaxy was discovering what it meant to function without the species they had tried to control. Merchant Lord Kexthala stood in his empty operations center on Kepler Prime, staring at screens full of red warning lights. His interspecies shipping empire, once the largest in the galaxy, was collapsing. Half his cargo fleet was lost somewhere in hyperspace, unable to navigate without human-designed route markers. The other half sat in dock because no one knew how to maintain the quantum drive systems that humans had helped design. Status report, he ordered his operations manager, though he already knew it would be bad news. 23 ships overdue on their deliveries, sir. The crystalline hegemony is threatening to cancel all contracts if we can't deliver their food shipments. The Xanthari coalition says they'll find new shipping partners. The manager's tentacles writhed nervously as he spoke. Sir, we've lost 80% of our business in the last year. Kexthala had built his fortune by being the bridge between different alien species. He had hired human logistics experts because they understood how to make different alien technologies work together. Humans had designed his shipping routes because they could think in 3 dimensions, better than his own flat-minded species. Human diplomats had negotiated his contracts because they could understand and communicate with anyone. Now all that was gone. His company was trying to operate with alien-only staff, and it wasn't working. Different species couldn't communicate effectively without human translators. Navigation systems built by one species didn't work well with ships built by another. Trade agreements that humans had carefully balanced to benefit everyone were falling apart as each species tried to get better deals for themselves. Keep trying to contact human space, Kexthala ordered. Offer them anything they want. Triple salaries. Exclusive contracts, anything. Sir, we've been trying for months. They don't respond to any communications from outside human space. 3 systems away, Hive Queen Scalandra was facing an even worse crisis. The crystalline hegemony's food production had collapsed completely. Without human agricultural techniques, their crops were producing less than half the nutrition needed to feed their population. Worse, some of the modified crystal plants that humans had helped develop were dying entirely. Scalandra looked at the reports from her agricultural worlds with growing panic. How many are we going to lose? She asked her chief advisor. If we can't find new food sources in the next 6 months, 20% of the population, Your Majesty, maybe more. The crystalline hegemony had grown by 40% since adopting human farming methods. Their entire civilization was now too large to support with traditional food production. They needed human help, but the humans were gone. What about the other species? Can anyone help us? The Xanthari have their own food problems, Your Majesty. The Vorthak are dealing with civil unrest. The Neural Collective has stopped responding to communications entirely. Scalandra had authorized dozens of desperate expeditions to try to steal human agricultural technology. They had found abandoned research stations and empty farms, but no humans. All the equipment was there, but no one knew how to use it properly. It was like finding a library full of books written in a language no one could read. On Vorthak Prime, High Regent Thexmori was dealing with something his species had never experienced before: rebellion. For the first time in Vorthak history, lower caste workers were questioning the social order. They had been exposed to human ideas about equality and individual worth, and those ideas had taken root. Even though human teachers and philosophers were gone, their influence remained in the minds of young Vorthak who refused to accept their assigned places in society. The workers in Sector 7 are refusing to report to their traditional jobs, reported Military Commander Vectar. They say they want to choose their own work like humans do. Then force them back to work, Thexmori ordered. We tried, Your Majesty. They resist, and when we punish them, workers in other sectors join their protests. The unrest is spreading. Thexmori had spent decades maintaining perfect order in Vorthak society. Every citizen knew their place and followed their assigned role without question. It had been stable for thousands of years. But 5 years of human influence had planted ideas that grew like weeds, impossible to remove once they started spreading. The worst part was that Thexmori was beginning to suspect the rebels might be right. He had seen how human societies functioned, how they could be both organized and free. Part of him wondered what it would be like to choose his own path instead of following the role assigned to him at birth. These thoughts terrified him. If the High Regent himself was being influenced by human ideas, how could he expect his subjects to resist them? On Sigma Draconis, the neural collective was experiencing something even stranger. For millennia, their species had shared a group consciousness, thinking and feeling as one unified mind. But human art and music had awakened individual awareness in some collective members. Without continued exposure to human creativity, they couldn't return to pure collective thinking, but they also couldn't fully develop as individuals. Individual designation 447, who had once been simply part of the collective, now experienced loneliness for the first time in her species' history. She could still connect to the group mind, but she was aware of herself as separate from it. The feeling was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. "We need the humans back," she transmitted to the collective during their daily communion. "Without their influence, we are becoming less than we were, but we cannot return to what we were before." The collective struggled to respond. How could they ask for help from the very species they had voted to restrict? How could they admit that human contamination had actually been evolution? Dr. Na Eun-hai, safely back in human space, read the intelligence reports about the alien crises with mixed feelings. She had cared about her Xanthari patients and their families. Knowing they were suffering without human medical help made her sad. But she also felt a grim satisfaction that the aliens were learning the consequences of their choices. "Any word from the Galactic Council?" she asked Intelligence Officer Yoon Min-jung during their weekly briefing. "Officially, they still claim the galaxy is better off without human influence," Yoon replied. "Unofficially, at least 6 species have tried to send secret diplomatic missions to human space. We've turned them all away." "What kind of messages?" "Offers to renegotiate. Promises of better treatment for humans. A few have even offered to withdraw from the Preservation Alliance if we'll come back." Dr. Na was surprised. "Any from the Vorthak?" "No, Thexamori is too proud to admit he made a mistake. But we're getting reports that his own military commanders are questioning his leadership." The intelligence reports painted a picture of a galaxy in crisis. Trade networks were collapsing. Food shortages were spreading. Medical crises were going untreated. Cultural movements inspired by human ideas were destabilizing governments. Most importantly, the aliens were trying to solve these problems by becoming more like humans. Democratic movements were growing on dozens of worlds. Species that had never cooperated before were trying to form new alliances. Individual rights were being discussed on worlds where the concept had never existed. But they were doing it badly, without guidance, like children trying to copy something they didn't fully understand. "They're trying to recreate what we gave them," Dr. Na observed. "But they can't, because they don't understand the principles behind it." "That's the assessment from our sociologists," Yoon agreed. "You can copy human technology, but you can't copy the human way of thinking that created that technology. You can copy human social systems, but you can't copy the human values that make those systems work." Dr. Na looked at the reports of suffering on alien worlds and felt a complex mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to help. It was her nature as a doctor to heal those who were hurt. But part of her was grimly satisfied that the aliens were learning the price of trying to cage humanity. "How much longer do you think they can hold out?" she asked. "Not much longer," Yoon replied. "The food shortages alone will force them to act soon, and the social unrest is getting worse every month. Several species are on the verge of civil wars. And when they finally ask for help," Yoon smiled, "that's when the real negotiation begins. This time, we'll be the ones setting the terms." Outside Dr. Na's office window, she could see human colonies thriving in their isolation. Without the need to maintain facilities in alien space, humanity had been able to focus all their resources on their own development. Their technology was advancing faster than ever. Their colonies were more prosperous than before. Their culture was flowering in new and exciting ways. The aliens had tried to make humanity smaller. Instead, they had made them stronger, more independent, and more valuable than ever before. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would come asking for humanity's help. And this time, humanity would be in a position to dictate the terms of their return. 3 years after humanity's withdrawal, Ambassador Jang Woo-jin received the first formal communication from alien space. It arrived not as a demand or a threat, but as a simple request for dialogue. The message came from the United Species Assembly, a new organization that notably did not include the Vorthak Empire. Jang stood in the communications center aboard Haven Station, humanity's newest outpost at the edge of their space. The station had been built specifically for this moment, when the aliens finally came asking for help. Director Song Min Kyung joined him as they read the message together. "They're calling it a request for renewed cultural and economic exchange on," Song noted. Very careful language. No mention of their previous ultimatum. No apology either, Jang observed. They can't afford to lose face by admitting they made a mistake. The message was signed by representatives from 17 different alien species, including many that humanity had never directly dealt with before. The crystalline hegemony was there, as were the Zenthari Coalition and the Neural Collective. But the Vorthak Empire was conspicuously absent. "When do they want to meet?" asked Song. "As soon as possible, according to this. They're describing the situation as urgent galactic concerns requiring immediate attention." Song smiled grimly. "I bet it's urgent. Our intelligence reports suggest half the galaxy is either starving or in civil war." 3 weeks later, Haven Station's main conference room hosted the largest interspecies diplomatic meeting in decades. 17 different alien delegations had arrived, their ships filling the space around the station. The delegates themselves were a remarkable sight. Species that had rarely worked together, now united by their common need for human assistance. High Counselor Velkmana of the Andromedan Republic spoke first. Her species looked almost human except for their silver skin and completely white eyes. "Ambassador Jang, we thank you for agreeing to this meeting." "We're always willing to talk," Jang replied diplomatically. "What can we do for you?" The alien delegates exchanged glances. They had clearly planned this conversation carefully, but none of them wanted to be the first to admit their desperation. Finally, Trade Minister Kolthex of the Zenthari Coalition spoke up. "The galaxy has changed since humanity withdrew from interspecies affairs. We're experiencing challenges that we believe could be addressed through renewed cooperation." John kept his expression neutral. "What kind of challenges?" Another delegate, Speaker Zalnoth from the crystalline hegemony, leaned forward. "Food production issues. Our agricultural systems are producing insufficient nutrition for our populations. Medical concerns," added Healer Mextara from the Outer Rim territories. "Disease outbreaks that our traditional treatments cannot address. Infrastructure failures," said Engineer Tekvar from the shipping guilds. "Navigation and transportation systems that no longer function efficiently." One by one, the alien delegates listed their problems. Social unrest, communication breakdowns, trade network collapses, cultural movements they couldn't understand or control. It was a litany of galactic dysfunction. "These are serious problems," Jang acknowledged. "But I'm curious, what changed?" 3 years ago, the Galactic Council declared that the galaxy would be better off without human influence. Uncomfortable silence filled the room. Several delegates shifted nervously in their seats. High Counselor Velkmana finally answered. "Perhaps the galactic situation was not fully understood at that time." "Ah," Jang said. "And now it is better understood?" "We believe so, yes." Jang activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red zones indicated food shortages. Orange areas showed trade route failures. Yellow regions marked social unrest. Nearly half the galaxy was colored with some form of crisis. According to our information, things have gotten significantly worse since humans withdrew from interspecies affairs. Food production is down 30% in former human agricultural zones. Interspecies trade has decreased by over 50%. Medical treatment success rates have fallen dramatically in systems that previously relied on human healthcare. The alien delegates stared at the display with obvious discomfort. The scope of their problems was even worse when seen all together. "What we're proposing," said Trade Minister Kolthex, "is a new framework for human-alien cooperation, a partnership that respects human independence while allowing for mutual benefit." "What would this partnership look like?" asked Director Song. Speaker Zalnoth activated her own display. "Renewed human medical assistance for worlds facing health crises, agricultural expertise to address food shortages, technical support to rebuild navigation and communication networks, cultural exchange programs to promote understanding." "In return?" Jang asked. "Full recognition of human autonomy in all internal affairs," said High Counselor Velkmana. No restrictions on human expansion or colonization. Equal representation in all interspecies organizations. Preferential trading status for human goods and services. Zhang was quiet for a long moment, considering the offer. This is quite different from what the Galactic Council proposed 3 years ago. These are different times, admitted healer Mextara. We have learned that diversity of thought and culture makes the galaxy stronger, not weaker. And the Vorthak Empire? I notice they're not part of this United Species Assembly. The alien delegates exchanged uncomfortable looks again. High Counselor Velkmana answered carefully. The Vorthak are dealing with internal matters at the moment. Their society is experiencing adjustments. Zhang knew from intelligence reports that the Vorthak Empire was facing its first civil war in 1,000 years. Young Vorthak, exposed to human ideas about equality and individual choice, were rebelling against the traditional caste system. High Regent Thexmori was fighting desperately to maintain order, but the rebellion was spreading. What happens if humanity decides not to resume interspecies cooperation? Zhang asked. The question hung in the air like a threat. Several delegates looked genuinely frightened by the possibility. The galaxy needs humanity, said Speaker Zalnoth quietly. We understand that now. Without human innovation, human connections, human ways of thinking, we're becoming smaller, less creative, less capable. You tried to make us smaller 3 years ago, Director Song observed. Yes, admitted High Counselor Velkmana, and we made a terrible mistake. We were afraid of change, afraid of losing control over our own societies. But we discovered that change was happening anyway. Young people across the galaxy had been inspired by human ideas, and those ideas didn't disappear just because humans did. Engineer Tekvar spoke up. Our young people are trying to build the things humans taught them to imagine. Democratic governments, equal societies, cooperative technologies. But they're doing it badly without guidance. They need teachers. And you want humans to be those teachers? Asked Zhang. We want humans to be our partners, corrected High Counselor Velkmana. Not our subjects, not our supervisors. Our equals. Zhang looked around the room at the 17 alien species represented there. 3 years ago, these same species had supported restrictions on human freedom. Now they were practically begging for human help. I'll need to consult with the human government, Zhang said finally. This is a decision that affects all of humanity. Of course, said High Counselor Velkmana. How long will you need? Give us 2 weeks. As the meeting ended and the alien delegates returned to their ships, Zhang and Song stood alone in the conference room. What do you think? Asked Song. I think they're genuinely desperate, Zhang replied. And I think they've learned that they need us more than we need them. Will the human government accept their offer? Zhang smiled. Probably. But not their first offer. We have some negotiating to do first. 2 weeks later, Zhang met with the alien delegates again. This time, he had a counter-proposal. Humanity is willing to resume interspecies cooperation, he announced. But we have some additional requirements. The alien delegates leaned forward eagerly. First, humanity will be recognized as a catalyst species with special protections for our cultural and technological development. No species or organization may attempt to restrict human growth, expansion, or innovation. Second, all humans living in alien space will be governed by human law, not alien law. We will establish human courts and human administration in any system where we operate. Third, humanity will have veto power over any galactic legislation that affects human interests. Fourth, any species that wishes human assistance must allow unrestricted human immigration and cultural exchange. The alien delegates were quiet as they considered these terms. They were far more demanding than anything the old Galactic Council would have accepted. But the galaxy was collapsing without human help. These terms are acceptable, said High Counselor Velkmana finally, and so humanity returned to galactic affairs. But this time they returned as the indispensable partners, not the controlled subjects. They had proven their worth by walking away, and now the galaxy was eager to keep them happy. Dr. Park So-jin, now serving as humanity's chief of interspecies relations, made the final log entry. 3 years ago, the galaxy tried to cage us. Today, they've offered us the keys to their cities. We learned the most important lesson in any relationship. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away.